So most people are really intrigued by the idea and benefits of floating, but they're really concerned with getting into an enclosed space or a small space and feeling claustrophobic. So in today's video, we're going to be covering some of the reasons why that is, some of the solutions, and then just chatting more about the actual people we floated in our space. Claustrophobia. 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 Claustrophobia.
Claustrophobia.
Don't interrupt me.
Claustrophobia, one of the most common questions that we actually get. And so JP and I here behind the camera are gonna break down what claustrophobia is and all the different points surrounding it to hopefully give you guys a better idea of what you can worry about and what you don't need to worry about. Where are we getting started with this?
We're gonna figure out exactly what claustrophobia is, and we're gonna go through some points of how we've dealt with it over the years.
Okay.
I need coffee.
We need coffee in the morning.
What do claustrophobia and floating have in common?
So why is it a concern that people have? So let's look up the definition of claustrophobia and we'll just see if we can use it on this guy right here.
Claustrophobic.
Well, that's not very helpful.
Claustrophobia.
Extreme or irrational fear of confined places.
Another little description of claustrophobia versus claustrophobic is a situational phobia triggered by an irrational and intense fear of tight or crowded spaces. It can be triggered by things like being locked in a windowless room, being stuck in a crowded elevator, or driving on a congested highway. First off, it's an absolutely reasonable concern. People not wanting to be trapped in a small space or just not being comfortable going into a confined space. When we have the option not to be in a small space, we're probably more comfortable. But you're asking me to get into a small tank or a pod or a chamber or a cabin, and then asking me to lay down in the dark for an hour or more at a time. I don't feel there's like a lack of control, or just like I don't feel super comfortable doing that. And so I would say that if you are of a sane mind, that makes complete sense. There's things that even though we do this all the time, full time, can we get a t-shirt that says that all the time, full time?
No.
Even though it's something we do all the time, it's something we never judge or judge people for, because it's a completely rational thing to think about when you're coming to a float center and you're asked to get into a small space. We actually have larger rooms, which we'll show you probably a little bit later at some point. But the idea of why it's an actual concern is just you're getting into a small room or enclosed space to lay around for an hour or two. Yeah, because keep in mind too, you're paying for this experience. You're coming to a place of business to pay your hard-earned money to get naked in a big bathtub to float around. You know, actually organizing and paying for this experience is totally a reasonable thing to ask, like, am I gonna be claustrophobic?
So why isn't claustrophobia such a big concern for most people? Why is claustrophobia, or why isn't claustrophobia? Why claustrophobia isn't as big of a concern for most people?
Okay, so what did you ask?
Why isn't claustrophobia as big as a concern as most people think?
Well, that is a loaded question. The big three parts that we can cover, and we'll just not cover them in any specific order, but they'll fall into the category of you're in complete control of your environment and you're in complete control of your experience, which is when we actually retain control over something again, we're not as worried or anxious. The other part is just the perspective, right? Like when you're doing something new for the very first time, it's weird, whether that's starting a new job, starting a business, new relationship, or coming to float for the first time. It's just something new that you have to get used to. You have these kind of worries before you've done it because you don't know what it feels like to have that feeling of claustrophobia or not have that feeling of claustrophobia when floating. So once you get in for the first time, so many questions actually get answered, including the, will I be claustrophobic? And the reality of it is you probably will not. There's a very, very high chance that you will not. But then the third category that things will fall into which is a big one that I guess we talk about a lot, just your nervous system plays such a huge role in the environment of floating. So even if you go in and you're a little bit nervous, what ends up happening is your body's actually pulling you the whole opposite direction. So when you're nervous or have these feelings of claustrophobia, what's happening is you're actually creating a stress response in your body. You're feeling anxious, you have increased heart rate and blood pressure and all those types of things, a little adrenaline happening. But when you get into a float tank, and just because of the environment that you're getting into, your body is actually going to try to pull you, and your nervous system is going to try to pull you the other direction. So even if you're a little bit nervous, what's going to happen is it's going to pull you over to the direction of being a lot more relaxed. So float tanks are going to naturally help you lower your blood pressure, lower your heart rate, bring in some endorphins and dopamine to kind of calm you down. It helps a lot with pain in regards to that. But this video is not about the benefits. But anyways, it puts you into a way more relaxed state. So it ends up not being an issue. And if anything, the idea of being in a small space, when it comes to floating, starts to shift from, you know, being worried you're gonna be in a small space or being bored or any types of things. And then you start to feel way more chill, way more relaxed. We have a perception that because we're getting into a smaller space than we're used to, we're automatically gonna feel claustrophobic. But what ends up happening is when you go into a float tank and realize that you can get in and out anytime you want, you can keep lights on or off anytime you want, and you just get to lay back. And not only that, but your nervous system actually craves the environment. Because there's nothing special about floating. Like, float tanks are just an environment that's set up to really match our nervous system to help us relax. So when we're not having to fight gravity, when we get to lay in there and have no light and we can't tell depth or where we are, you end up laying incredibly relaxed. Your nervous system is so very happy. And because if you choose or eventually move to the point of having no light, you actually realize that it feels like anything but a small space. Because when you don't have any light happening and you can't kind of see or perceive anything, you just feel like you're in this huge, massive space.
So how would you summarize everything we talked about today?
Well, I was just about to summarize everything we talked about,
Well,
so it's a great
I'm
question.
I'm the director here, so
It's
I'm
a
the one
great,
to ask
it's
you
a
the
great,
questions.
it's a great alignment of minds, and
Yeah.
the use of thesaurus is.
Me pointing at the camera.
I'm gonna bite your finger off. Okay, summarize what we talked about today, which was just a whole whack load of different things. But claustrophobia, why it's one of the main concerns, makes complete sense. We'll never judge you for it. Like, if you've never floated before, it's probably something that's gonna cross your mind. But the summary is you're in complete control, kind of like what I covered earlier. You're in complete control of your environment. You'll realize that after you float for the first couple times, you're gonna be really relaxed. A lot of your questions get answered, a lot of your concerns just disappear. And then the other part of it is that your nervous system is just going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you and just help you relax and chill out. So, I don't know. And also, if you ever wanna start floating people in your basement, good luck. It's a lot of fun. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. We're gonna be releasing a video like this once a week. So we have a lot of different questions that we already need to answer that we just get asked so often. So things like being bored or how often should you float, etc., etc. But if anybody has any suggestions or comments or things they would like to know more about, you can either hit us up in the comments or you can shoot us an email at float@moderngravity.ca.
Thanks for sharing that, Matt. That's very honest.
I like being honest.